On this episode of ARS-TV, we stop by Scott Holdridge's garage and learn about his jet dragster Black Ice and what it's like to go 300 miles an hour. Next, we have Brent Jarvis of Performance Restorations in the ARS garage telling us about his award-winning show car Maxed Out and the day he put it through its paces at Road America. All this and more on this episode of ARS-TV.
All right, we're here with Scott Holdridge. He's the owner and driver of the Black Ice Jet Dragster. Scott, thanks for being on the show.
Not a problem.
Yeah. Now, this is a unique vehicle. I mean, when did you decide to run a jet dragster and why?
I decided a while back to run a jet because it was more of an affordable approach to go racing, basically. I mean, we're exhibition, so we do, make some money doing it and everything. And I drag race bikes for a long time before this, and I started getting in the jets, and once I found out it was more affordable than I even thought, I decided to purchase one, and I got trained by a guy that did real well, Billy Barkus, and he trained me really well with that, and he was my mentor.
Where did you get this one from?
This one I got from Billy Barkus.
Okay.
This was the car that I actually learned in.
Okay, great. And tell me about a little bit about the engine here. Maybe a little bit about the application for this in civilian and military application.
Yes, these motors come out of T38s, T2s, and there was one other one too. I want to say it's an F4, I'm sorry, it's an F5. This motor here was probably over in Vietnam.
Okay.
But they do use these motors too as a civilian version. Now on the civilian version, they do change some stuff in there, but most of the parts are the parts that we're able to use in this motor here. Obviously in a civilian version, you wouldn't have an afterburner or anything like that, so we change it from what normally is right here. We change the back end of it where it would normally just be like a cone.
Okay. And this is measured in thrust. What kind of power are we talking about?
It's about 5,000 horsepower, and it's about 5,000 pounds of thrust.
Okay. So that can push you down the track. You're reaching mile per hour of how fast and what kind of time?
This car will go 300 miles an hour. The fastest this car's been was 308, and low fives, 5, in the teens.
Okay. And now we're visiting you in the wintertime. You've got it torn down. You've got it taken apart, and you're doing a little bit of maintenance. Tell us a little bit about, what you're actually doing and maybe some of the things that you have to repair. We know in a naturally aspirated car, rods get replaced, pistons get replaced. What do you do on a jet? On
a jet, the reason why, I take these apart during the week. We don't do our work on the track. I mean, unless it's like a 2-day event or something. Usually, if we're tearing any of this stuff apart at the track, we're in trouble. I mean, we're not. It's going to be tough to make it down the track. So in this one, this isn't a general maintenance. This motor was hurt. And a lot of people think, that it's a jet motor and nothing happens to them. Well, when you're pushing them to, do the speeds that we're doing, and when you're chopping them off, isn't it good for a jet motor? Like in the air, they slowly back it off. So all that stuff kind of hurts them a little bit. In this case, the reason why this is apart is because I have what we call a screech, and it was a bad one. What a screech is when you have the wrong fuel to air mixture. And what it does is it's like a glass. Like if you ever see like a high noise like break a glass, and what it does is it's the same thing. And a lot of this parts on here that go on the inside, it's just like a tin, and the tin will once you get a screech, the tin will just break itself apart. And in this case, that's exactly what it did. So this one here, believe it or not, will be repaired. If it was going in an airplane, they wouldn't repair this, they would replace it. And a lot of times that's what I end up doing too. I mean, it depends on, what's broke or whatever, but.
These parts are readily available if you need them, or is it something?
They're getting harder to get, but yes, we can get them. Some of the other cars, they're harder to get, like the J60 cars, which is a lot of the cars that run around my area here are J60 cars. Those motors, if you have them tuned right, can generally go a little faster than these, but it's harder to get the parts. So I would for a J60. So I would rather run a J85, which is what I'm running, and I got mine tuned right to where I can run with with most of those guys out there. So.
Okay. Now, whatever you're actually doing the exhibition, you do a flame, you do a smoke. There's a lot of popping noise. What are you actually doing to make that happen?
What we're doing is we're hitting the afterburner, and when you see just the smoke, we're just doing. There's two different parts of the afterburner. You have your smoke, which is your afterburner fuel, and then you have your what we call a hot streak, which is what lights your afterburner.
Okay.
And when you see just the smoke, we're just putting just fuel to it. Once you see that fire, now we're lighting it, and now we're hitting the hot streak and lighting it. Sometimes when we stage or pre-stage, you'll see just a bunch of smoke just come pouring out the back. We're just getting ready for that light to go green, and as soon as it goes green, all we do is we strike the hot streak, and that's full horsepower.
Now, you've been in the car. Have you actually ever been in the tower, especially at Great Lakes Dragway, and felt what it does to the tower?
No, not
I've been up there, and it actually rattles the computers, it rattles the windows, and everybody up there is trying to hold everything onto the counters because of this, but it's a beautiful show. What kind of fuel are you running in this?
I do run Jet A sometimes, like down in Florida right now. I mean, we just came, Texas I was just at. And down in Texas, K1 kerosene was actually more expensive than Jet A. Okay. So we were buying Jet A down there. Everybody thinks the Jet A fuel is more of a volatile fuel, and it's like some high octane, and it's really not. It just has a couple additives that kerosene doesn't have. It has an anti-icing additive, and it also has an anti-static additive. And the anti-icing is for extreme altitude changes, which we don't need. And anti-static is for when they're built, they're filling a plane full of fuel, 500 gallons, that if they get, a little spark, we're not really, filling 500 gallons, so, we don't, again, it's another thing that we don't need. So, I mean, basically, these cars will go just as fast as they do, kerosene. So
performance-wise, the fuel really doesn't matter as long as you're using a product that's designated for this engine.
As a matter of fact, some guys run diesel, and actually diesel, according to some people, is even because it has a higher burn rate on it, that it makes it a little bit faster with the diesel than it would with the kerosene. But I haven't seen it with mine, and the kerosene is a little bit more expensive. But it's better for these fuel nozzles here. These are the main fuel nozzles that actually feed the motor, and the kerosene just burns cleaner in through those fuel nozzles than the diesel.
How much fuel are you using in a single pass with all the the smoke and the fire and the actual pass?
We're burning almost 15 gallons of fuel.
Okay, so that's quite a bit.
So yeah. At full afterburner, at full throttle, full afterburner, we're burning about a gallon a second.
Okay, now this tubular thing behind you, this is the afterburner. This is actually the tube where you actually are shooting the flame out of.
Yes, this is the tailpipe. And in here is the afterburner, and if I turn this just a little bit, this is where on this motor it gets fed. On a lot of these J85s, a lot of the guys use what they call stands, where they have nozzles going all the way around, which is what GE did from the factory for their military planes. Okay. I changed mine to a ring because it's less things to go wrong. A lot of times when you have the stands in there, it'll break them off, and a lot of guys break them off. But some of those guys out there do know how to make their cars go really fast with the stands, where I'm kind of making a little bit different approach and running what we call, this is the rings, and what we call the rings in here. Okay. And that's what.
And that's similar to a burner on your barbecue grill, where it actually is shooting the fuel out, and you can actually.
Yes, and this is what actually feeds it. Okay. And then you got a couple more things in here. You got what they call a bishop's hat. You got a flame holder, which I don't know if you can really see it in there, but it's all the way the last thing in there. And what that does is it lets the flame stay lit. If that's not in there, the flame's not going to stay lit. Okay.
So now you've finished your season for 2012 here, and now what do you have scheduled for 2013?
2013, so far I have about 20 events. I'm doing a lot of the stuff for NMCA and MRA events. Okay. I got some potential stuff lined up with a couple of tracks over in Indiana, and I think I got a couple down in Texas already too. I got to make some phone calls on that. But
okay. And even though it is exhibition, do you go out there to win?
Oh yeah. You don't build a $90,000 race car to go get beat, Okay. So, or at least I don't. Okay. So yeah. I mean, when I go out there, I like being competitive still. That's the one thing that I did, you know, when I was with the motorcycles and stuff, is I was, you know, we were competitive and you know, we went out there to win. So for me, it hasn't changed. I think, you know, some of the guys may not care as much, but I like racing against the guys that do care, because those are the guys that...
Going to go out there and put on a show. It's going to be a great exhibition.
We're going to put on a great show, you know, just like a top fuel car, you know,
right.
so...
Okay. Well, Scott, thank you very much. Again, check him out, Scott Holdridge, Black Ice, and hey, he's doing 300 miles an hour. Are you? Okay, hey, we're here in ARS-TV Garage again, and today we got Brent Jarvis with us. Brent Jarvis is a well-known folk hero here in the Northern Illinois area. For people that know him, he is a road racer, a drag racer. He's been doing this for quite a few years, and also the proud owner of Performance Restoration that turns out some of the best cars for your customers in the Midwest. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Today we're going to talk about the maxed out car. We were fortunate enough that you helped us get in up at Road America, and we got to video you racing your show car. Tell me a little bit about that.
That was quite an experience. It was the first time really that I ever got to try that car on a racetrack, so I was a little jittery and had the same feelings that a lot of guys have about racing their nice street cars, which is unusual for me because most weekends I'm out going door to door with my real race car with these guys, and we're so close that you can't even see the paint on their car. But the last thing I wanted to do was scratch that car. Once I got in it and started racing it, I forgot about a lot of that. And I just put the pedal down and started having fun, and the car worked really well, and it ended up being a really fun day. I had a great time with it. It performed as well as it looked.
Oh, that's awesome. And now the car was the ISCA International Show Car Champion for 2011?
Yeah, that's right. I toured the ISCA not intending on going for that championship. I do that whenever we bring a new car out. We go to the ISCA and I'll do several shows, usually Chicago, Indy, Detroit, maybe go up to Wisconsin. I do it for myself because I like it. It helps business. It's a really good bunch of people. It's also the only professionally judged, sanctioned show organization in the world. There's a championship series, there's a lot of money involved, there's points that you acquire at each show. It's really a big deal for guys like me and other builders that do this, and that's where you see most of the upper end cars is on that circuit. You see a lot of cars that you will never see anywhere else. A lot of the cars on that circuit are cars that have taken years to build and can cost actually millions of dollars to build. After 3 shows, I had won Best of Show at 3 shows, and the show chairman came up to me, and right away I thought I was in trouble, as usual.
Hey, you can't win anymore.
And Brent, I need to talk with you. I'm like, oh, great. And he put his arm around me, he says, I'd like you to go for the championship this year. And I said, I hadn't thought about that, but what's involved with this? And he says, you got 3 wins already, you need 2 more to qualify, and then you can go to the championship finals in Omaha. And this all came up where we had to do this in a 4-week period. And I was traveling all over the country. I wasn't really prepared to do that. And I said, you know what the heck? This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to try to do this. It's not something I was planning on, but it was something that guys like me dream about. If you could actually win that, or even just go there and be with the best cars in the world. So I went for it, and we won the next 2 shows, which qualified me, and the week after, we were in Des Moines, Iowa, won the show. We turned around, come all the way home. I was home for 1 day, turned around, and went back to Oklahoma for the finals. And at this point, it's warm, and we're all driving cars.
Right.
I mean, I should be at home driving my Chevelle around on the street, but we're inside this arena and setting up, and all the best cars in the world are there, and it's just jaw-dropping, the quality of these cars. Every single car is one of the ones on a big display that you can walk all the way around, lighted, raised up in the air, and it's just really, truly overwhelming. Well, it went through its process. The judging went, and they had a big ceremony, and it came down at the end between myself and 1 other car. And as they were giving off the places, fifth, fourth, third, and second, and first, and all that. When they named my other competitor, Joe, second, I knew I won, and I was speechless at that point. And then they announced that Maxed Out was the championship series winning car. And I went up there, and it was truly an overwhelming experience.
Wow.
to win that award amongst what are the best cars in the world, the absolute best cars. And here's a car that is driven. And I think they looked at that, because a lot of these cars are not. We know that. That's what a lot of people say about those cars. Some people have a problem with it. I don't. They are what they are. You drive your cars, I drive my cars, and I drive the show cars too.
Right.
It just makes more work.
Right.
I have to clean things and take things apart and do paint touch-up before I go to the show circuit. And they actually talked about that, and I think they respected that, and that might have been one of the things that edged that car a little bit.
Okay.
So some things may be changing in that organization.
Well, people really want to use their cars. As you know, we drive everything we have. I mean, Amy's driven the wheels off of her Nova. I think in the 4 summers we drove it, she put over 30,000 miles on it. That's a lot of driving for a second car.
But that's what cars are for.
Right.
If they just sit in the garage, it's another garage ornament.
Right.
And I can't talk about that enough. My customers want to drive their cars. That's the biggest thing these days. They have to look nice. Everybody wants a cool looking car. But they need to drive, they need to function, and they all want them to function well. They want them to be fast, they want them to handle, and it makes them drive nicer so you're comfortable. You spend seat time like Amy, or you, or me, in a car. You're living in that car.
Right.
You want to be comfortable, you need it to drive nice, and you have to work on these old cars to do that. You have to have a formula for putting these things together, so not only do they work, but they stay together.
Well, now we've talked about the car. Let's talk about specifics of it. What did it start out as, and what gave you the concept of actually building Maxed Out to what it is today?
Well, that's an interesting thing. About 15, I want to say almost 15 years ago now is when the Pro Touring started. My first car was that orange customized Corvette.
Right.
And that car, I called Hot Rod Magazine up and I talked to them about these cars, because at that point most of those cars were really turds on the street.
Right.
They didn't function. I said, listen, I'm going to build one of these to actually work. These guys are talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. And they said, this is great, let's get it out to the track when you're done. We did. They did the article, and it set a precedent. They made a comment in there that we're calling you out.
Right.
You guys with the Pro Touring cars, we're calling you out. Well, that changed everything, and now that's all these magazines are about,
Right.
is getting these cars to the track, and a lot of them are really starting now to closely resemble race cars. Well, when I sold that car, my next goal was to go racing professionally on the road race circuit.
Okay.
I've been a straight liner all my life. I had to make some adjustments to do that, but getting out to the road race track, I immediately fell in love with that because of the seat time, the thrill of it, on and off the throttle, sliding around the corners, everything about it appealed to me.
Right.
So I looked around and said, where can I race these cars all the time? Vintage racing. It's alive and well. I started going to the events, seeing these guys out in the 60s Corvettes and Mustangs, Camaros, having a ball out there. And I'm looking at these guys, wow, this looks fun. I'm going to build one of those.
Okay.
Okay, so got the rule book.
Being a Corvette guy.
And I found a
naturally.
Corvette, found a donor car, and there you go. I started building it. Well, somewhere along the line in there, I crossed over some of the rules. And I got this car to a point where I didn't think it was going to pass tech anymore for vintage road racing, and I wouldn't have been in the class with the guys with the rest of these nice vintage cars. And the thing looked so cool with the fenders pulled out and the 345 series tires stuffed under it. My ISCA mind started going again. I said, you know what? I need to back up, build a car, and keep that rule book in front of me for the vintage racing. And let's make this car now into a show car, but leave that driveline in it,
Okay.
just for grins.
Okay.
So at that point, the car had been built, the frame was done, the cage, the suspension, and the car was primed. So it had to come apart anyways to be painted and powder coated and whatever we were going to do. I just went the extra mile, painted and plated everything.
And polished.
Polished
got aluminum
and
block
polished
in there.
and painted and
Right.
painted for about a year, and finished it up to that level to where we could go to the show circuit. Well, during that time, I located another Corvette. Good friend of mine, Donnie Hovel, who works on vintage race cars. He used to be a crew chief at Newman Haas Racing. Had one in his shop that was a dead project. And I got a hold of the car, It was a perfect donor car. They were in nice shape, and we took that car apart, built the chassis, the driveline, stretched the fenders out, painted it, and got it all ready to race in 4 months.
And that's with an original style 427 in
Correct.
it. And is that a 4-speed, 5-speed?
It has to be a 4-speed, an iron block 427. Okay. Control arms have to be stock. The brakes. There's very strict rules. So you can't have all the cool stuff that these Pro Touring cars have. 15-inch rims.
Right. And you're running bias ply.
Bias plies. I mean,
Tires, right.
they give you things here and there. The bias plies are big. I mean, they're 10-inch wide tires, but they're bias ply tires, and they have sidewalls this big. They flop all over the place when you go into a corner.
18s or 20s, which are common on cars.
It's a different driving experience. You know, the two cars maxed out, and the other one, which I call Blue Thunder, they're similar in one aspect, but when you put them through a corner, these are completely different cars, the way they turn or don't turn, and they're different driving animals. But once you get them set up for what they are, they're both fine. They're really fun, both of them. So that car actually got out to the track before the red car got to the show circuit.
Okay.
So there wasn't a real need for speed in the red car with me yet, so I took my time with that show circuit and did that and kind of dedicated the car to that. Took it to some outdoor shows, took it to SEMA, and did some cool things with it.
Right.
And when we finally won that championship, and I said, you know, now it's time to start driving the wheels off this car, and that's what's happening with it now.
Okay. And you took it up to Road America. You know, Road America in itself is just, I mean, it's a country club style as far as the landscaping and the way it's kept up. It's a beautiful facility. And it's one of the longest tracks in the United States that's operational today. Is that correct as far as road
It is. I believe it is the longest. They're building one that's a little longer out west somewhere. But to my knowledge, it's 4.2 miles. It is the longest, and they say it's got the highest speed of the road race tracks. And it's rather intimidating to a lot of drivers. It can be really spooky because it's got 3 long straightaways on it. My vintage racer does 170 on 2 of them and 160 on the back straight. You know, these GT cars are getting up to 200 miles an hour on the front straights. That's what the NASCAR guys get close to that. It is a fast track, and you're right, it is well groomed and well maintained. It's one of the most picturesque, most beautiful facilities in the entire country. Every racer I know that goes to that track loves that track. They go out of their way. I know guys that only race there. They won't go anywhere else. I know guys that go to only one event a year, and it's at Road America.
Right.
So when it came time to race the red Corvette, the choice was easy.
Okay.
This is what I consider my home track. It's a known entity for big block Corvettes. They kind of rule up there in vintage racing because they're the horsepower king. So this is the place to try it. They came up with a Corvette day up there, as you well know.
Right.
And so let's take that car up and just give it a try and see what happens.
Now, besides the setup, what changes did you make to the car? Did you change the wheels and tires? Did you change the clutch in it? Did you do anything to the engine to make it perform better?
No.
Oh,
I stuck it in the box,
okay.
towed it up there, filled it up with gas. I did use 100 octane that day instead of 93 just to be safe,
Right.
and ran it. I mean, the deal is this is a street car now, and the way I drive it on the street is how I want to see how this works. I don't want to change anything to have a different situation at the track. Then it would not be that way on the street with different brakes or different tires or anything. I mean, even the way the car was aligned up, everything was exactly how I just drive it around fine.
And I noticed you didn't put any race tires on there. You had your regular street tires
The
on there.
Michelin Pilot Sport street tires that I drive around with, that's when I took up there, and I wore them out pretty good that day. Because I was not easy on that car. It was sideways a lot in the corners.
And you had your GPS going on your cell phone, so how fast were you getting? You know, the speedometer, you might look down occasionally, but is it completely accurate?
That car ran about the same speed as the blue car. I got up to 170 on the front straight. I could have driven that car a lot farther down the front straight because the brakes are actually way better on the red car.
Okay.
They're a 13-inch heat-treated wheelwood rotor with 6-piston calipers. I don't have that on the blue car. I have Corvette calipers and 11.5-inch rotors.
Right.
I didn't do that though. I didn't want to risk going in the gravel, you know.
Right.
So who knows how fast that darn thing would have gone. But I did see 170. That's where I was taking it to. I would brake it at the end of the pit row way before the brake markers on the straightaways.
Now you had to do a little kind of a rebuild on the motor after a certain amount of time. What was the process in that? And I know you went through some dyno time on it just so that when you did get out on the track, it would perform to what your expectation was.
Well, what happened with that is, like I said, the car was built as a race car, and the engine originally had 13.2 to 1 compression. The cam was almost 800 lift, and I actually drove it like that for the first year. It drove itself apart, literally, is what happened to it. You know, that's a lot of engine to try to drive. I put 4,000 miles on that engine.
Oh, wow.
It finally spun a couple of bearings. It had oiling problems. It just rattled itself apart. I was putting 110 octane in it, but it's just a lot to ask to go to cruise nights every night with an engine like that. And I figured it had a life expectancy, and we'll find out what it is. So I drove it till it started making noise. I took it apart, and we put 10 to 1 pistons in it. It's still got a big solid roller, not quite as big as 715 lift. And now this thing runs on 92 octane. It's like a tame kitty cat now compared to what it was, but it's still dynoed out at 775 horsepower at only 6,000 RPM.
And what kind of cubic inch is it?
It's a 565.
It's a 565, which is a standard size big block for drag racers and short deck.
It's all aluminum. It's real basic. You can, it's real easy to get a big block out to 565.
Yeah, cooling problems or anything?
No, it's all aluminum. This thing actually runs ice cold. It usually runs around 165 degrees.
Oh, wow.
It's actually hard. When it got cool towards the end of the summer and we're still all going cruise nights, that thing had a hard time getting warm.
Now, people look to you as being kind of a subject matter expert at these, you know, third gen, second gen Corvettes. You're doing a lot of stuff in your shop with this. How many cars have you built for other people that are similar to Maxed Out and Blue Thunder?
We've done quite a few. I actually have done these for a long time, these C2 Corvettes. I love them. They're one of my favorites. I love all muscle cars, regardless of make, brand, size, whatever they are. I have a real love for them. But the Corvettes, the C2s, are one of my favorites. They're comfortable to me. I like the way they drive. After Maxed Out in the blue car, we did get a few calls, and we have constantly had 2 or 3 of those cars in the shop at all times. There's 2 in there right now. I have 2 customers I'm working with that we're trying to find donor cars for. They all like the fat fenders, like Maxed Out, so we're stretching those out on all the cars.
The Pro Touring look is here to stay. That's what people really want.
That is not a fad that's going to ever leave. We've all seen Pro Touring. It's come, it's not really, or Pro Street, not really gone. There's still big tire cars out there. But I think Pro Touring is going to be around for a long time because of the drivability aspect.
Absolutely. People want to drive their cars. They want to use their cars. They want to be part of what's going on with the movement of muscle cars on the street.
Yeah, and to, you know, verify that, all you need to do is look at the OEs. Look at what they're building, the Corvettes, Camaros, Mustang, and Challengers, and you can get into the foreign cars also. But they're building the same thing we're building, and they're selling them through the dealerships.
Absolutely. With a warranty.
With a warranty. You got to pay for that, but you know, and that's probably what a lot of these guys with these old cars want. They ask me for is the late model electronic engines. A lot of them get Corvette suspension or various aftermarket companies. You know, everybody's making parts for these cars. It's up to the builder to sort through it to find out which stuff works and which doesn't, but there's so much available, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. It's done a lot for our industry. It's created a lot of work for people. It's very positive, every part of it.
Absolutely. Well, Brent, it's a pleasure talking with you. Thank you very much for inviting us to come up with you to Road America and for the build of Maxed Out. It's one of those cars that is going to be around for a long time, and we're glad you did it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Special thank you to our sponsors, Burgess & Burgess, Crate Engine Depot and Rockenbach Chevy, Meineke Cars Care Center of Mundelein and now Lake Villa, Schwartz Performance of Woodstock, Illinois, and Performance Restorations in Mundelein. Be sure to stop by our ARS Promotions fan page and click like to keep up with everything going on with ARS-TV.